Right on, writers, and welcome first-time viewers to the Books by Adrian author platform. I am your host, Adrian Santiago, and this is Typewriters Podcast, where we do kind of a follow-up show to Livestream Sunday. We stick around a little bit with our guests from this week's episode of Livestream Sunday, and we get a little bit more on the crafty side of how they do what they do. So let's go ahead and bring out our guests in just a second here, but don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Don't make me tell you again. All right, let's do it. Here comes Miss Dawn Dugle. Hey, welcome back.
How you doing? Hi.
I am well. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being on Livestream Sunday this week. That was a great episode. I don't know if you had fun, but I had fun.
Listen, I love talking about books and I love talking about writing books, so that worked out real well.
Well, then, lucky you. We're going to do it some more.
Hey, all right. That's good.
All right, so you mentioned that your characters kind of live in your head. They talk to you. They take over the writing process. So I'm going to guess that you're a bit of a pantser. But what is it? More of a plotter, more of a pantser, somewhere in between?
I'm an absolute plotter. I have
no kidding.
Yeah, totally.
I pegged you for a pantser. I was wrong.
No, I mean, truth be told, I'm probably more like a plantster. Or a bread machine. I've heard this one too. But this is how I do it. I have developed a modified beat system for myself where I know that in my romance books that I need certain things, they need to hit by certain percentage in the book by 75%, you know, we got to have our whiff of death, you know, that kind of thing. And I originally went with the Saved by the Cat beats. Save the cat. I said Saved by the Cat, didn't I? Saved by the Bell, but Save the Cat. Save the Cat beat system and romancing the beat. But I found that it didn't really work for what I was trying to do. So I modified some of these things. I added some things here and there. I've added in the heroine's journey, and it really sort of cobbled this thing together. My friend Susan and I have been working on this for a couple months, and so I know that, like, I have a digital board where I put I've got a template, and when I am coming up with a story, I'm like, all right, what's going here? Who is this person? What do we know about them? What are they going to do? What's the absolute terrible thing I'm going to throw at them? And how can I make it even funnier? Like, how can I make it worse? And I fill in those squares, and I think that works for me. It works for me because it breaks it up, and it says, instead of saying, oh, I've got to write 60,000 words to make a book happen. No, this little block over here is about 500 to 1,000 words, and over here is this. And when you can break up writing a novel that way, I think that it takes a lot of the anxiety out of it for me. And knowing that, okay, I'm doing these 3 things today, and I find that I write more than what I had set out to do for that day, and there's not a lot of pressure for it because I know where I'm going.
Nice.
That said, here's the caveat to that. I often will get to, and this is why I redid the beat system, because what I found was I was getting about 50 to 60% of the book, and I would lose my mojo. I would lose my lady boner for it. I'm not sure I shouldn't say. I would lose my mojo for it, and
I've always liked the expression "lady boner."
I lose my lady boner for it, and lose my lady jam for it, and I found that if I could just like step out, you know, I write spicy romance, and I'm also smartass. What do you expect? This is like, it should have like an asterisk warning on the video. But I get to that point in the book, and what works for me is to print it out, and because I get to that point and I'm like, nobody's gonna read this. It's the worst thing I've ever written. Nobody's gonna read this story. Everybody's gonna hate it. It's the worst piece of fiction in the history of the world. And I'm like, I know that's a little dramatic, but you know, if I'm gonna do something terrible, I'm gonna go all the way terrible. So I print it out. I take a few days, I print it out, I go through it, and I sort of do a hard edit, and inevitably I fall back in love with the story, and then I realize this is not the worst thing I've ever read. This is actually a great story that needs to be finished, and the reason that I was stopping at this point was because this is usually the point in the story right before you throw the worst thing at your character. It's right before they have their lowest point of the novel, and when you love your characters like that, it's sometimes hard to pull the trigger on that. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Most of the time it's not, because you want their happy ending. You want the ending to the book, but in order to get to that, they have to go through this terrible thing first. And so that's sort of my process at this point. I haven't written a full-length novel since I've tweaked my beats, so I'll have to follow up with you and let you know if it keeps being that way or not. But that's, so yeah, total plotter. I have spreadsheets. I created a map of the town of Pleasure Point, which is an island. I have all the streets lined out, the names. I've got all the characters in a spreadsheet, how old they are, what they look like, their quirks. There's a online social media platform that's a fake platform that they have that they all kind of message each other on. So I have all their handles like that. I get made fun of for my I get made fun of for my spreadsheets, but let me tell you something. You write 14 romance books and you're like, I could have written some more stuff down. Like, oh crap, wait, was he a linebacker or a quarterback? And oh crap. And then you have to go back and read the book and try to find out. And then my friend quoted me to me the other day. She said something funny and I was like, oh my God, that's funny. That should be in a book. And then she started laughing and I said, crap, that's in one of my books, isn't it? She's like, yeah, I read that in your book. I said, fine.
What's truly hilarious is that you could not be talking about this on a better channel, because I've got two buddies or other author tubers on here who are friends of the channel, Richard Holiday and Martin Lejeune, and both of them swear by spreadsheets. One of them drafts his novels in spreadsheets. They do the whole plot, everything. They do everything in spreadsheets, and they swear by them. And I'm terrified of spreadsheets. I don't like them. I just look at them as more math, and I hate math. I'm not good at math.
I don't look at it as math. I look at it like this, and this is my best friend Carolina had given me. I was telling her about my first series, and I said, "There's so many characters. There's like 60 or 70 characters already, and we're not even out of book 2." And she said, I think you need to put that in a spreadsheet, because that's what I did with she did that with Dungeons and Dragons. She did that with all of her characters in Dungeons and Dragons. I said, that is genius. Like, because you can see it, and you can, right, like, I can tell when I'm naming characters what names I've used. I also have I have a tab on my spreadsheets of characters that are no longer with us. They either didn't make it out alive, or they arrested, or they were, for whatever reason, and
they're out of the story. Yeah,
they ain't here no more. And what happened to him? This is the other thing when you're writing series, you forget what happened. And I have a column for where we met them and what happened to them and what is their term of endearment for their significant other. So it's not always babe. Hey babe.
Yeah, babe gets old.
No, don't call her babe. She is a 45-year-old doctor. Let's try something else. So yeah, I've got all that, and even that said, there's still things I wish I had written down, because there's a lot. It's a lot to it. But don't be afraid of spreadsheets. But you find your own thing. You find your own thing. What works for you, and spreadsheets work for me. Google Docs work for me.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. And here's something that'll flip your lid. I will come up with the book title and write the blurb and put the book up for pre-sale before I outline it. I mean, I'll outline it, but I write the blurb before I write the book.
Excuse me?
Yep. Sure do. Yep. Because you know what's going in your book. You know what the story's about. You know the teasable element. You should be able to write your book. I understand that not everybody will be able to do that, but that's from my years of TV.
It's bold. That's bold as hell. I'm into it.
I think in 12 blurbs where I did pre-orders, I think I changed maybe one thing, and it's just because the story ended up better, and I went back, and it was the very last book that I did pre-order on, and I tweaked the blurb. When I knew the story was going to go a different direction, I fixed the blurb, but
yeah.
And I'll put a pre-order up that I haven't finished writing, because it makes me
it lights a fire under your ass.
It lights a fire. I get it done.
Yeah, it makes
deadlines are good. So, yeah, I'm insane. So maybe I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. Like I've done 2 rapid releases now, and I'm like, why would I do that? Like, why did I do that?
Insane people make the best authors. You're probably in great company. You're gonna be fine.
I've met some kindred spirits. I am
Kooky
like,
Dukes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, welcome. Come on, let's come sit by me. Let's talk crazy. Yeah.
Well, along that same topic of like, you write the blurb before you write the book, what are some of your writing routines? Like, what are some of the things that you always do, things that have been working for you in your writing routines?
I write, for me, writing in the morning, and I like doing the creative thing in the morning when I'm fresh is important. And blocking out that time. I want to say it was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She talks about like being in the chair. Her and Shonda Rhimes both talk about, you know, there's this idea that being a writer and being an author isn't a job, or don't treat it like a job, or, you know, find something you love. And Shonda Rhimes was the one who said, look, it is a job. You have to show up for it. You get in the chair and you sit down and be ready to write the words. And those words may not be, you know, Pulitzer Prize winning words, but you've got some words done. And then it doesn't feel like it's this impending doom that's sitting on your soul. And that really has hit home with me, that, you know, making the time and making it important. Not everybody with a 9-to-5 job can do it in the morning. I wrote my first book. I did 5 months. That was a nonfiction book. I did 5 months of research for this this restaurant chain, not chain, but this restaurant group. And I embedded with their business for 5 months, and then I wrote the book in a month because I had all the stuff. But I had a full-time job. I spent my breaks and my lunch period. I printed out all the interviews, like every spare minute. I did this. I look like I was a serial killer. I printed out the interviews and I'd slice them. Like, I'm just over here like arts and craftsing my interviews thing, and I've got these like strips of paper, because you know, when people give you an interview, it's not always linear. So I would cut up the stuff and I'd kind of piece them together before I have the software I have now that I can digitally do it. But that's what I had, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna DIY my vision board for this. And so people would come into my office at my day job, and I'd have just scraps of paper, everything, and I'm like, I'm on lunch, I'm having lunch-ish. It might have bled over a little bit, but I got my work done. Like, they can't complain about it. So that's what I did. And then I'd go home and I'd write, and I wrote on the weekend. Like, I did every spare moment I had, I wrote. And the month of April in 2018, my hair looked the worst it has ever looked. My yard looked like a Scooby-Doo house. Like, there was, like, I didn't do it. Like, I did nothing. I picked up groceries. Thank God they had grocery pickup, because I knew if I went in, like, people stopped. But I made it a priority, and I was like, I've got a deadline, I've got to get this done. And I made it happen. And I don't remember much of the month. I don't remember much of that whole month, but I got it done. Yeah. And I think that when you make it a priority and you say, I am going to write a book, I am writing this book. And not only am I writing this book, I am writing this book with the intent to sell this book and sell a lot of this book, and have people fall in love with this character. Yeah. This is a business, and in order to make that business work, it's not personal. It's going to feel real personal when people don't like your book and they give you a 1 star because the very things you wrote in your book they didn't like, and it's like, okay, well, okay, you didn't like the comedy and my romantic comedy, like, it's too funny. Like, what? Like, one gal didn't care for in one of my books, the hero falls for the heroine. He's like in love with her right away, and I'm like, the whole point.
That's the genre. Like
that's it. I'm like, and so I took that 1 star and I was like, all right, you know, like insta love is not for everybody, but here's wish. So it's this whole thing. Like, it's not personal. It's a business. I have to remind myself of that sometimes, and making it a priority, because if you make it a priority, the books will make you a priority. And I know that's very woo woo and.
No, I believe that.
Like,
that
I'm going to manifest this whole thing, but when you show up for it, it shows up for you, and I firmly believe in that. And that's what works for me.
You know, first of all, I, like you, do my best writing in the morning. In fact, before breakfast, like I can't even eat anything. Like, that's the best writing I'll ever do. Is I wake up and I sit down at my computer with a cup of coffee and I start writing. However, I'm married and I have 2 kids. I never get to do that. So the only time that I ever get to write is at night when everybody's asleep, or I work overnights 5 days a week at a hotel. So I'll write there. I use up a lot of my downtime there to get this done.
Yeah.
And the turning point for me was this book called The War of Art. I don't know if you.
Yes.
Oh my God! It changed.
Is it Stephen? Wait, which one is it? Stephen Pressfield. Yeah, Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, The War of Art,
book.
and the follow-up was Turning Pro, and those 2 books, I swear by them. In fact, I'll put it in the description for everybody at home. The War of Art is actually available as an audiobook for free on YouTube right now. So
nice.
I'll put that in the description down below. But that book changed my life. The concept of the amateur loves the writing, loves the reading, all of that. He loves it, great. But you know, he does it as a hobby. That's not a profession. The professional is here to treat it as a business. He sits down on time, like you go to work on time. He clocks in for it. He gets the work done. He clocks out. You know, the whole 9. So that's what I started doing. I just started, you know, setting aside time every day. This is my writing time. This is what I'm going to sit down at this time. I'm going to get it done. And just like you at work, if I'm not actually doing something work related, I'm writing, I'm editing, or whatever it is. I'm getting it done. So, yeah, man.
I think there's a, you know, when you like, and I cannot remember who said it, but it's like when you reach that point where it had, like, this is it. I cannot do this anymore this way. I cannot be, I do not want to work for somebody else. I have had these stories in my head.
Oh my God.
I need to, I want to work for, I am working for me, and putting this whole, put your oxygen mask on first before you help somebody else on an airplane. Like, that works for your creativity too.
Yeah, that's good advice all around. Yeah,
all around. Like, you are not going to help anybody. And it doesn't, writing, being a good husband, a good wife, a good partner, a friend, daughter, aunt, what have you. You're not going to be anybody. You're not going to do anybody any good if you are not taking care of yourself first. It is not selfish to set aside time to do that. It may not be as much as you want, but at some point, like, you have to set aside, for me, I have to set aside time and say, all right, I am making this a priority right now. I need to make me a priority, my creativity a priority, and get it, like, just get it done. And I find that my best work, when I go in it with that attitude and you say, this is what I'm doing today, these are the things I can set aside. These are the things that aren't as important as this right now. Like, what is going to move the needle for me? What is going to push this forward? What gets me to that? 10 of my books have been bestsellers. That and $5 will get me coffee. Like, you know, you know, great. You have a bestseller. Fantastic. What does that mean? It means jack squat is what it means. What is important?
Congratulations, anyway. I still
thank
think that's
you.
very
Like, I'm an award-winning author. I've won 63 awards. I've 10 of my books have gone to bestseller status, and a couple of them have stayed in the top 50 for the last month of their respective charts.
Dang.
What does that do? Like, it doesn't help you if people aren't buying the books, if they're not telling their friends about it, they're not reading through your series. If you have a series and they read the first one, but they're not going through the other stuff, like, that's a red flag. So what are we doing to move the needle forward? How are we telling people? I realized that the other day, I've got this great newsletter. I've got fantastic readers. They are all in. They open everything. I've got a high open rate. And I realized the other day that I'm not talking about my books in them. I'm like, Hey, here's fun. Maybe we should mention one of our books each week in the newsletter. Yeah. They love your books. They love your characters. I did a character crossover. So I did this. I had somebody ask the question on a social media channel, and they said, all right, well, where else does this character show up? I love to see these characters. Where else is... And I said, all right, I'll take 10 minutes. It'll take 10 minutes. It'll be no problem. No, it did not take 10 minutes. It took 2 hours because those characters are in everything. And so it's just like, but now I have it. And I shared it with my readers, and I saw the reads go up and the pay and the sales. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that you kind of need as an author. You kind of need that background, but it's also that connection with your readers. So what are you doing? How are you connecting with them? And when I say put your creativity first, I don't always mean, I don't sit down every day and write on a novel. But today I might sit down and write an email to my readers. Tomorrow I might sit down and put book blurbs together so that my mom can eloquently talk about my books when we go to SmutCon, also known as Shameless, this weekend, because she just basically tells people my books are about sex, and I was like, yeah, we need a little bit more, like not just
it's a pretty broad topic, Mom.
It's pretty broad. Maybe we could also tell them the tropes. Maybe we could tell, like, what's a trope? Let's talk about tropes. Let's talk about these. So having those sort of tools in your toolbox and creating those things where you create it one time and it'll keep working for you, that is what I'm talking about. Using that creativity to supercharge what you're already doing to get your message out there. But that's also that business of being an author stuff too. So but some of that marketing stuff I do wait till later. Like, I don't always use my good creativity for it, because scheduling social media posts doesn't take as much creativity as maybe writing them or coming up with the graphics. So
all the rest of that stuff kind of falls under like busy work for me. But I'm like you, I try to set aside time for all the creative parts of it, the writing and all that stuff.
Yes.
We recently had Melinda Kucera on the channel, on the shows, and she writes newsletter emails to her subscribers as her characters from her books. And she was talking about how she if I'm remembering correctly, that she was unmarried, she didn't have kids, she didn't have like a lot of home life stuff to talk about, so she started doing that. And I'm like, I would much rather prefer that. Like, I don't really care what's going on in authors' like everyday life. Tell me about your stories, tell me about your books, like tell me about your characters. And the idea of writing the newsletter emails as the characters just like blew my mind, and I'm gonna try doing something like that soon.
I mean, that's one way to do it. I don't care for blogs that are like, it was a warm autumn day and and we put on our wellies and tiptoed through the crispy leaves as they made their annual autumn. And always in my head, it's Moira Rose. David, the leaves have changed. David, what does burning smell like from Schitt's Creek? Like, that's who I always hear in these blogs. And you just came for a recipe. You didn't come for all this stuff. However, I think that there's a fine line. There's a medium. I think there's a happy medium that you can find where you share funny things. I share funny stories that happen to me, and I'm telling you, the stuff that my dad says, people love that crap. He is 82, he has 0 shits left to give, and he will just let it all hang out in restaurants, just in general. And so when I share something funny, or he'll say, you could put that in your newsletter, I'm like, well, I guess I'm putting it in the newsletter now. But there's always a little bit of the behind the scenes part, and then there's something from the characters. And I think that there's that. Nice. For me, that works. That works for the readers. It's a good combo. I don't do book recs for me. I do them from a character. It's called The Joy of Reading. Her name is Joy, so it works out. But she'll, like, once a month, she shares book recs that are in the genre. In, like, okay, romantic comedy or romantic suspense with characters over 40. That's what that's what my readers want to know more of. Absolutely, we'll share that.
Nice.
I have a senior stoner by the name of Ziggy who talks in Malifaux. He's always just
Malifaux.
He's like and oddly enough, like it like kind of makes sense. Like when Ziggy starts making sense, like that's when you gotta worry. So I just like everybody loves Ziggy, so I do a column once a month called Ask Ziggy, and Ziggy gives life advice, like Dear Abby. And
I love it.
Oh
That's
my
genius.
gosh, it's fun to write. Like it's your characters are already, you've already created the characters. You already have the background.
Yeah, they're there.
You know, one of the big things that people love in my books, I do these text chains. There's whole chapters that are just text chains between family members, between the senior citizens.
That's
on
cool.
Pleasure Point. It started as a thing I needed to get some advice, get some information out there, and I write in first person, so it's like, how can I add this in? And I was like, well, what if it was part of this text chain that went completely off the rails? Like, what if it starts as this, but then the parents start talking about spexy times, like, and belly dancing and glitter? Like, what happens there? It's some of the most fun to write, and I put those in my emails as well, like just random text chains from my characters. Like, what would they say about Halloween, or trying to come up with a Christmas list. Like, everybody send in your Christmas list, and every character is like, you know, whatever you get me is great, and they all like, you're just in love with her, and you just take it, you know. It's fun. You'll have to just go see. You'll have to go read it.
I'll have to go check it out.
Yeah.
It sounds like, first of all, I want to say that you are probably the funniest guest that we've had since like Garrett Robinson in the premiere of this season. You're hilarious. So I just I appreciate that very much. Some levity into the show.
Yes, it is.
What is some of the best writing advice you think you've gotten?
Oh gosh.
Or given?
That is a very...
That one always puts them on the spot. Everybody's always like, I don't know.
The best writing advice that I have heard and I would give is to not worry so much about when you're first writing your story, when you're first writing that first draft. Don't worry so much about the marketing of it. Don't worry so much about the big overall picture, because I think that'll stop creativity faster than a lot of other things. And because it's this sort of analysis, this paralysis thing, like, I don't want to make the wrong move, or I don't want to make the wrong decision. And it's like, okay, well, not making a decision is a decision. You know, I wrote 2 screenplays that are utter crap. They've got a great premise, and I love the stories, but the dialogue, I went back, I was like, why isn't anybody buying this? Whatever, I'm going to write these novels. So I wrote these novels, and then I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn these screenplays into books, and I'm just going to have books. I've got this thing.
Yeah,
so I pull out the screenplay, and I'm looking at it. I was like, oh yeah, this is terrible. Yeah.
That's why nobody bought it.
That's why nobody buys it. I'm going to have to rewrite this, and I'm going to rewrite it spicy, because I originally wrote these for Hallmark, and that's cute, but no. But here's the other thing. Like, here's the other thing. I went back and did a heavy edit on my first book, and I realized, like, how much passive writing could I put in this book? Like, a lot. But I did the best I could. This is the other thing. If the longer you write and the longer you're in this business, you are going to get better. Great news! You're going to get better.
Your first book is always your worst, no matter how good it is.
It's going to be not great. And you know what? People are going to love it anyway. And that's the other thing. Like, I could sit here and rework all these stories. There's part of me that says, okay, maybe the first series wasn't necessarily a romance. Maybe it's a mystery that has a love story. No, you take the love story out. And so I could sit here and go round and round about it. But guess what? That doesn't get any more books written. So keep writing. People, and I guarantee you, the very moment that you think, nobody's reading this stuff, I don't know why I'm writing this stuff, that is the day somebody will reach out to you. I had a reader, I was having a real serious, like, fork in the road. What am I doing? A little, like, my half-hour pity party.
Oh, sure.
I have from time to time, like, oh, this is terrible, I don't know what I'm doing. And a reader reached out, and she said, during Hurricane Ian, I was like, the other one, the I.
The most recent one. Yeah.
During Hurricane Ian, she had just downloaded my recent book. She was hunkered down in a bathroom with her dogs, and she read my latest book, and it kept her, gave her something to focus on. It gave her some laughs in the middle of this terrible tragedy. And then she went back and reread my novella that I had in my first series, because that's her favorite. And I'm like, nobody ever tells me that. Like, I never hear that's the favorite. And I was like, and her house is devastated. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm just in tears. And she was like thanking me for having written this book and wanted to know, she wanted to read more. And I was like, okay, all right. Everything is in perspective. Everything is in perspective. So,
oh yeah.
Write the book.
That's a great story.
Write the book.
Write the damn book.
Somebody wants you to write. Somebody's waiting for you to write their favorite book right now. And if you quit, if I had quit after the first one, if I had any idea, like if I had any, like you go into your first book and you don't know what you don't know, and you think it's the best thing ever, and you just barrel, at least I did. I'm just barreling through the world like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Why don't you just read this? And I've learned some things along the way. And if I had quit after that, I wouldn't have written her favorite book. I wouldn't have written these other books. And
the one that got her through the hurricane.
The one that got her through a hurricane. Like, these are the things. Like, it's all a matter of perspective. But again, some people aren't going to like what you write. Some people don't like the spice. Yeah. They don't like the comedy. They don't like the fact that Wisdom is 40 years old and uses the F word. She uses the F word too much. And I'm like, what the I'm serious. I won't say it.
No, you can't. I encourage fuckery on my channel.
Fuck? Like, yes, there's a shitload of cussing in these books. There's cussing. There's sex. There's people over the age of 35.
There's bodily fluids. There's all kinds of stuff.
Getting happy endings and happy ever afters. Yes, thank you. I'll be here all week, because they should. Like, yes. So,
absolutely.
That's a craft.
My final question for you today, as we wrap it up, since it's almost 6. What publishing lessons have you learned through all this? The actual act of putting a book into stores and whatnot. What's the big lesson for first-time authors, you think? Because we talked marketing on the last show. This is more about the actual, publishing process.
For the publishing, I would say if somebody wants to publish you, if a traditional publisher or a publishing house comes to you with a contract, or you are invited to join an anthology, this is I can't stress this enough. Spend the money and hire not a contracts lawyer, but an intellectual property lawyer.
Okay.
It's not about the contract, it's about your rights. Number 1, never let anybody else copyright your work. Never. If a publisher comes to you and says that they will get it copyrighted, and it's not clear in that contract that copyright is yours, do not walk, run away from them, because that is your work. They need you, you do not need them. End of story. The other thing is, when do your rights revert? When do you get your rights back? Are you always going to, is there any chance of getting that book back where you could publish it yourself? Let's say they haven't marketed the way, what is that? An intellectual property lawyer is worth the money that you will spend. If you spend money on nothing else, get that. I pulled out of 2 anthologies because they weren't clear. I could tell just on the contract. I said, you're not pointing out what the buy-in was, what I'm expected to do, the amount of money. They wanted everybody to kick in for a Kindle, Like I still go, why? I don't. That makes no sense. And like, what do you mean kick in for Kindle? What monetary amount are you talking about? And they didn't know because it was poorly run. It was there were just a lot of red flags, and I pulled out, and
yikes.
I was like, yeah, I lost my buy-in of $17. Okay, I'm fine. Like there was just a lot of red flags. So ask the questions. When you want to get your book published, I know it's very exciting and you want to jump at the first offer, but really ask yourself, what is it in it for you? How are you getting paid? How long do they have the rights? And that's why, one of the reasons why I went independent with my romance books, because I know what I'm capable of. I know what my investment of my time, I know what that's worth, and I know what I can get out of it. And you may not be able, if you're starting out, you may not be able to hire an editor. Okay, get Grammarly. I can't say enough about Grammarly. I did not run. I ran Grammarly on all my books, and then when I went and did a re-edit on them, I did it again, and I was like, what do you mean there's a thousand errors? What the hell? There's always something.
Always more.
It's like, oh my God. Get a good beta reader, get somebody you trust, and really be careful who you trust and what that advice comes from. Question everything. I'm Gen X. I question everything. I question authority. But
Anarchy
really,
in the UK.
Just really take people's advice. Take my advice with a grain of salt. It may not work for you. You may not want to market and spend time doing that. I really don't want to spend time doing that either, but it's important, and I'm getting to a point where I will have to hire somebody to do these tasks because it's taking up too much of the creative time that I want to spend writing. So that's a long answer to your short question, but
no, that's a great answer, because of all the authors that we've had on here, nobody's ever talked about the rights and all that kind of side of it. So that's a fantastic
copyright the crap out of it. I don't send out ARCs. I don't send out beta copies or anything until it's copyrighted. Nothing goes out until it's copyrighted. And anybody who if somebody's telling you don't have to copyright it, your work, short things, publishing them there's a whole, talk to a lawyer about it, but make sure you have your rights. It may not feel like much now when you're trying to get some bucks in for your books, but eventually you're going to be an amazing writer. People are going to want your books, and that book is going to be worth something someday. So really think ahead to that day. Like, what does that day look like? What do I need to do for that day? So,
well, I can't think of a better note to end it on, Ms. Dugle. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Your expertise, your knowledge has been invaluable. Thank you so very much for being on these shows today.
Thanks for having me.
For everybody at home, thank you for watching and listening. If you're listening on Apple or on Spotify, make sure that you give a 5-star review, leave a review for the show. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you want more from Ms. Dugle, all her links are in the description down below. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Right on, writers. We are out.